She was standing in line at the coffee shop, waiting for her frozen variation as I watched her from behind my tablet. It wasn't that I meant to watch her like that. She just happened to be extraordinarily beautiful in that very plain way, with her hair all crazy and her old sewn sweater with its protuberances in places it had been snagged. At some point she caught me looking and came over to sit across from me at the little table. I doodled something on the napkin I should have been using as a coaster. She lifted the stained paper and looked over it with raised eyebrows. "You're quite the artist," she informed me. "Have you done anything with it?" Taking a sip from my cup, I quite literally felt the intrigue coming off her. The enticing way that she cocked her head to the side, or the frank manner in which she spoke, passed on to me the strangest of things. I had fallen immediately in love with this woman. That's insane to say. I'd never been before a romantic, but there she was, the woman I'd seen the vaguest shape of in dreams. "No, I haven't," I said. That's a shame," she played with the napkin. "I get this really weird feeling from you." "What do you mean?" I shifted around in my seat, as though every facet of who I was as a person was under scrutiny. "It feels like I've seen you before somewhere. Have I seen you before?" "I don't think so," I grumbled while slowly nudging my foam cup along the table. "I'm sure I've seen you before. I guess I've got one of those faces. Really unfortunate." I offered the joke to her as a white flag to stop the stilted way in which she spoke to me. "No." Her voice was very matter-of-fact. "You are beautiful." I was frozen. Never before in my life had anyone told me I was beautiful. She could have chosen to say that in any way she'd wanted. She might have said I looked beautiful. That would have been a subjective way of saying it, like she knew that I wasn't, but she alone thought I was. But she said I was beautiful, like she'd gone out of her way to surpass all logic and impose onto the universe that I simply was, and it wasn't just her own opinion. I'm sorry. It genuinely caught me off guard, and it felt nice. I could feel the heat around my collar flushing my face. I made the noise as a general indication that I wanted to know exactly what was going on. She played with the napkin, scrunching it up, then lying it flat out again, so that she could push the wrinkles out. "Oh, I'm so sorry," she said. "I didn't mean to mess up your doodle." "It's fine." I smiled, wide. So wide that I saw her in slits. It's not even that good. "It's cute, though." She held up the napkin. "Thank you." "I mean that, though." She took a foamy sip off the top of her frozen chocolate coffee monstrosity, so that when she pulled away from it, she was left with a white mustache. "Here." She removed a pen from her purse and scribbled on the napkin, holding the thin paper in place so as to not tear it. "I think this makes it look a little better, don't you?" She'd written her number across the bottom of my doodle. "Yeah," I chuckled. "You're right. It really does look better that way." She passed the napkin across the table before leaving the quaint shop. It would be an understatement to say that I was totally flabbergasted by my interaction with her. As the minutes passed, it felt like a setup, like God itself had somehow intervened in my life for the briefest of moments to make that interaction come to fruition. It was scripted or something. I looked at her phone number. The blue ballpoint ink she'd used to scribble the digits stood out against the white napkin in stark contrast. Of course, I was overreacting, overanalyzing. Nice things happen to people sometimes. It wasn't unheard of. I returned home with the napkin tucked away in my front jacket pocket, hoping that I'd be able to contain my excitement for at least 2 days. You're supposed to wait a while after someone gives you their number anyway. At least, that's what old media tells me. It took me all of 2 hours after returning home before I messaged her. I was jittery about it, too jittery. I felt crazy. But once the message was sent, I sat the phone face down on the kitchen counter and went on making myself some lunch. Before I could even remove the sandwich bread from the bag, my phone was vibrating on the counter. I lurched forward. Had she been just as excited about it? But why would she be calling? No, she wasn't calling. I lifted the phone to find that I was receiving text after text so that my notifications had absolutely no time between each new message. At least 20 new texts flooded through. I scanned over them quickly, holding the screen in place as new messages came through from the same number. They went as follows. You should probably think of changing to wheat bread. It's healthier for you. I glanced at the opened bag of bread sitting on the countertop. Out of nowhere, I felt dizzy. Do you know what it's like to wear skin? I want to eat you right up, you know that? The sky is so blue today. I wish we could hold hands. I love the strange color of gray your eyes are. I swallowed hard while trying to keep my demeanor. This was nothing short of a dream. The far-gone surreal nature of the situation crept up my spine and threatened to strangle me. I set the phone on the counter, staring at the incoming messages as I palmed the counter with both hands. Trying to remember the color of the woman's hair was impossible. Trying to remember the geometric proportions of her face proved a futile effort. The world spun, and I watched and did nothing as my phone perpetually vibrated on the countertop. How was it even possible to send messages that quickly? Then the vibrating stopped, and I lifted the phone again. The woman sent a video. The image, with the play triangle in the center, was otherwise entirely black. What could she have sent me? I inhaled a great big breath before my index finger reached out and slapped the play button. The screen was encompassed in the blackness of whatever room she must have filmed in. Only the faintest whispers could be heard among the vast static. The whispers seemed to come from a wide array of different people with varying accents and tones. Still nothing could be seen. There were only the hushed voices and me. I craned in closer to the echoing of the speaker on my phone, hoping to decipher what the voices were saying. Nothing made any sense, and I could only make out the vaguest notions of a faraway conversation I was never intended to hear. Then came the sounds of gnashing, of someone or something opening and closing their mouth, followed by the sounds of crunching. It continued till it drowned out the sounds of the voices from before. For minutes, I thought the noise of the crunching was growing louder, but that wasn't the case. It never grew in volume. The camera simply got closer to the thing producing the noise. I craned in so close to the phone screen that my nose was nearly touching it. The vacant, black screen threatened me, beckoned me, told me that at any moment something awful was going to jump from the recesses of the dark room and say, "Boo! Gotcha." The camera whipped around until a pair of dry, cracking lips filled the frame. The mouth moved in strange jerking motions, as though it was having a difficult time operating as it should. The lips were caked in what seemed to be a vibrant red lipstick that stood against otherwise pale skin. The crunching continued, and it took me some time before I realized that the sound was coming from inside the mouth. The jaw moved and clacked open wide so that I could see there was no tongue. Then a delicate white hand came into the frame and mashed something into the mouth. I watched as the fingers moved away to reveal it placed a handful of broken glass into the mouth. Then the lips closed again. The jaws tensed. A muffled groan escaped the participant, and the crunching commenced. I clicked off the video. It was longer, but I did not want to see any more. Taking nervous paces in my kitchen back and forth, I debated over whether or not I should call the police. No. CG had gotten so good these days that I'm certain that's what it must have been. Of course, that's all it was. A darkness loomed around every corner in my house, and I threw open the curtains to welcome a bit of warm, natural light. It should have done more to calm me. The video wasn't real. Defeated, I leaned against the kitchen counter and blocked her number, then deleted the messages. On the off chance that it was real, at the very least, I would not have to involve myself with it any further. It was a silly prank. That's all. But regardless of whether or not it was only a prank, I shouldn't have to subject myself to someone that finds stuff like that funny anyway. I put my phone on the coffee table and decided to skim through some books on the shelf. For a long time, I'd been meaning to reread Child of God by Cormac McCarthy. I remembered it being extraordinarily dark when I was younger, but was hoping that maybe, with an older set of eyes, I could examine the actual literary prowess on display. I opened the book and paused as my brain fell through the cracks in the floor. The first page was empty. Of course, I was just fidgety and bothered by the messages I'd received from the woman earlier. I flipped the page. Books always have like a blank page at the beginning. Duh. Then the next page was blank. I fanned through. No words were inside whatsoever. I dropped the book. Reasoning kicked in, and I started thinking there was some provable reason for this. There must have been. Perhaps the press that had produced the book used poor quality ink or something, and it had simply faded away with time. Then I lifted another book off the shelf, something from V.C. Andrews. Blank through and through. All of the pages mocked me. I tore through the bookcase, but every tomb was an empty ream of paper. I was certainly losing my mind. Had someone come in and replaced every single book in my house with blanks? The cover stayed the same, but something was very wrong. A whistle sounded off somewhere, and I flinched, perhaps afraid that the sound would prick the reality around me and send all the air from the room. I scrambled to the window, looking out onto the street. It was just an old man whistling after his dog. The toy poodle breed scurried up to the man, and the man lifted the small dog into his arms. Then the man shifted around, and I could see he had no fucking face. I slammed the curtain shut. No thank you. No thank you. No sir. That was wrong. There was something very wrong going on. My phone rang, and I looked at the contact info. It read 911. I stared at the phone screen for what seemed an eternity, hoping against hope that my eyes deceived me, but the number did not change. Maybe the police would be able to help. My mind hung on a frayed string. I answered the phone. Hello? A shrill scream echoed from the speaker, and I nearly pissed my pants, pulling the phone from my ear. This was followed by the low droning of a man on the other end of the line. I cautiously put the phone back to my ear. I could feel my knees shaking, so I moved to a chair to sit. The man's voice on the phone came through like molasses, so that each word swelled painfully long. Hello. This is a checkup to make sure that you have cleaned your car today. Remember that if you do not catch the pigeons, they eat all that is to be mopped in the night. Please call Mom for advice on snake fire if its throat burns because of the rain. I shut the phone off. The nonsense language coming through the line was too much. The ridiculousness of it all was overwhelming, so I stomped through the house, looking for hidden cameras. All right, I said, with my arms spread out. I know you're watching me, so you can all come out now. Joke's over. I get it. You've officially scared me. No reality TV crew exposed themselves, and I was left standing in my living room like a madman. I tried looking outside again, but there was a row of faces standing out there just at the edge of my lawn. Well, I suppose I shouldn't say a row of faces, because none of them actually had faces, but there certainly were a lot of them. They simply looked at the house. How does someone without eyes look anyway? Inching my way to the back door of my house, I peered out of the window there to make sure I could spy no one. Then I darted, swinging the door wildly open and sprinting around the outside of my home to dive into my car. As I reversed out of the driveway, I felt a bump, then another. I had run over something. I slammed the brakes so that my car was hanging halfway in the street. A faceless woman stood, brushed herself off, pivoted to look at me from the front of the car, and cocked her head to the side. No abrasions or injuries, just that, just looking at me, observing, watching, piercing my soul with her faceless head. I drove off, watching in the rear view as the people who'd been lining my yard gathered in the street to watch me leave. I shivered as a cold ghost passed through me. There's something wrong here. Something bad is happening. My gut tightened as I heard my phone ringing from its spot in the passenger seat. My eyes darted to it. I looked at the info on the screen. It was coming from that godforsaken woman's number. Without hesitation, I rolled down my window and chucked it into the street. I pulled onto the highway. Pedestrians, no faces, turned to watch me. It was like I'd been lifted and placed directly in the center of twin fucking peaks. I was feeling sick. My skin was cold and clammy. My vision was blurry. Then the ringing came again, and my heart skipped a beat. My eyes darted to the passenger seat. There sat my phone. But I had destroyed it. It shouldn't have been there. It made absolutely no sense. I lifted the phone as my foot pressed against the gas. I didn't mean to. I swerved. Then all went black. Blinking awake in the hospital, felt better, like it was all a delusion. It was quiet. The huge window to the right of my hospital bed showed a beautiful moon in the black sky. It was absolutely nothing like you see in the movies. I knew exactly where I was immediately. There was no reaching around in the darkness to figure out where things were. There was only me, sitting up in the bed and looking around at the TV in the high corner, my phone on the table beside me, the curtain to my left that partitioned the patient on the other side. Briefly, I wondered who it was over there and what reason they'd come to the hospital for. Then the memories came flooding back to me all at once, and I laid back on the bed, a tingling reaching up like long shadow fingers from the pit of my stomach. I stared at the drop ceiling above, attempting to concentrate on one of the many small squares, hoping that if it filled my field of vision, I would be consumed by the square and no longer in the hospital. A soreness worked its way up my left side. Whatever numbing agent the staff had used on me was beginning to wear off, and I tossed the blankets to the side to see that the whole left side of my body was covered in deep bruising. Moving hurt. Breathing, too, began to hurt. Then I heard a crunching sound and the melancholy voice of a nurse. My heart pounded, sweat sprung across my forehead. I knew that crunching noise. I'd heard it before. The shapely shadow of a nurse on the other side of the curtain moved to slide it open. She got a good look at me and raised an eyebrow. "There's no need to mess up your blankets like that." She came to me and straightened the linens out. Her voice was sweet. That horrified me. "I love the strange color of your gray eyes are," she told me. I peered past her to catch a glimpse of the patient in the other bed. It was a man. He was chewing on something, opening his mouth. I went to speak. Electricity zapped through my brain as pain was everything. My words came out in a garbled mess, and my finger sprang to my lips. I wept. I had no tongue. "Shh," she said. "It's going to be okay." She scurried over to a cart and returned with something in her hand, offering it up to my mouth. To my surprise, it was a heap of broken glass, glistening from the moonlight spilling in through the nearby window. Try as I might to fight, my whole body shut down, and I was unable to push away her advances as she pried my mouth open.